so many times the birth father's voice is not heard, and it's an important one. And we wanted to try to find somebody, and what better way to find anybody than on Instagram?
Nice. I like it.
Just wanted to kind of hear your story about adoption and how you placed a child.
I actually found out about having a daughter last year. So
Mm.
I was not involved in the adoption process whatsoever. It was just one of those things where it was a 23andMe or DNA.com or whatever the DNA things would be. And it said they were very closely related to me. So me and my family reached out and we're trying to get clarification on how we were related. And then we found out that I had a daughter. So, and it was kind of funny because I found out on April 1st. So I didn't think,
Yeah.
I didn't, thought it was a joke. Turns out not a joke. But for the last year and a half, it's just been kind of getting used to the idea and adjusting and meeting and learning about her and sharing about myself. It was very hard and a little overwhelming in the beginning, but I think I'm at a point where it's starting to mellow out. We can really just kind of focus on building our relationship in whatever fashion that will be.
How old is she?
She's 10. She just turned 10 this year.
So 2011. I have a baby who I adopted in 2011.
Nice.
I'm guessing you now know who the birth mother is, and do you remember your relationship? Did you know that she was pregnant? Did you?
So it was a girl I had dated for a few years in and out of high school or at graduation and shortly after. I didn't know she was pregnant, and she never told me. So when I found out, it wasn't hard to put that puzzle together. But when I found out, I reached out, and it was probably the first time I talked to her in 10 years. So, and I was just like, hey, can you confirm this? And she was like, yep, it's true. And I tried not to dwell too much on why I wasn't informed, because it doesn't really matter 10 years later. I don't know what she was going through, and I was not a great boyfriend at that time. So I don't have any ill will towards her. It was just trying to move forward with what I can and what I can do.
Yeah. Does she have a relationship with your daughter?
I believe she did for the first couple years, maybe up until her second birthday, around there. But at this point, no.
And is she the one that gave you the contact information, or did you find that on your own?
Oh, through 23andMe or like DNA. And once we reached out, because she's only 10, it was her adoptive mother kind of being the communication or person of contact. So we kind of reached out, we started chatting.
Okay, and she responded.
She did. And she was like,
Okay.
we just did this within the last year and we didn't know if anything was going to come of it. But, lo and behold, find out I have a daughter.
Wow. And were they were they open? Obviously, they were open and responsive to you for parents.
They were. I think part of it has to do with her adoptive mother also being adopted. So she was really great in kind of facilitating and kind of letting us work through those kinds of things. I ended up going up where they live and like meeting with them and kind of hanging out, just getting to know each other.
Oh, that's cool. How was that for you? First of all, going back to when you realized this was a daughter, how did you take that? Like, how did you feel about that? What kind of emotions were you feeling?
Really just overwhelmed, and I didn't really know kind of how to proceed or kind of what she would think about me or anything like that. Obviously, as a child, I think they just want to know where they came from and start to answer some of the questions that they may have. But for me, the hardest part was figuring out, how do I fit into this position, because obviously I don't have any like parental responsibilities, and I'm she has her own family and she's taken care of and loved, and I think it's great. I think it worked out the greatest possible way. I was in no place to raise a child at that point in my life, but it was very overwhelming. It was very working through how to deal with that, and then not only working out how to deal with it, but I guess feeling that I missed out on a whole bunch, or like, there's 10 years that I was just unaware of. And I don't think it's like I really missed out, because obviously she has her own family and she's doing great. So I think it worked out the best way possible.
Did you feel any anger at first?
No, it wasn't anger. It was confusion, because I felt like if anything, you just let me know, and you can still go that way. But again, I didn't want to continually think about decisions that I had no part in,
Yeah.
because it doesn't benefit me. And I don't think even getting the answers to those questions doesn't fix anything, right? Doesn't
Right.
change anything. So I'm still kind of in the same spot. No, so I would say it was not as much anger, or no, not anger. It was not necessarily confusion. I just didn't know how to process it.
Yeah. Almost like a numbness. Really.
Yeah, I don't I don't have any children. I have a longtime girlfriend. So that was a big thing that I had to work through
Mm.
with my partner, because obviously she didn't know about this either. It's a fairly large thing to spring on.
Anyone.
Yeah, but lots of therapy, lots of counseling and talking through things. And I think we're in a much better spot now.
That's awesome. And so are you gonna, well, first of all, your parents, how are they feeling about anything? Are they feeling like, well, what we want to know who this child is, or
Yeah, so actually when I did the 23andMe, it was under my mother's account. So my mother actually found out before I did, and she's the one that kind of relayed that information to me. Once that happened, it was fine. We, hopped on a Zoom call, I believe the same day, and just kind of did introductions and just, hey, just small things like that. Over time, I've gone to visit them. They've come to visit me. I think we'll probably get to hang out, maybe once or twice a year.
so
It
your
only,
parents have met her too?
Mhm.
Oh, great. That's so wonderful that they were open to that and allowing, this could have played out in so many different ways.
And that's why I think it worked out the best way for
Yeah.
everybody. And I think that obviously the biggest thing is making sure that she, my daughter, or is taken care of and is happy. As long as she's taken care of, I think everything else can be worked around.
Has she talked to you at all? Have you been able to ask her any questions, or has she asked you any questions? I'm curious what that was like for her too.
So she is very aware and articulate. So it is great that she can kind of talk about these things, because I know at that age I was not able to, with obviously not adoptive issues, but just different issues. And it's great. We actually went to counseling together, or I went with her family, just talked about these things. So we do talk about it, but it's not at the forefront of what
Of
we're
course.
hang out. We're just we still hang out almost weekly via Zoom, just playing games online and just hanging out for an hour or two a week.
That's awesome. Are you in the same area or?
We're both in the Southeast, different states, but they're
Okay.
pretty close, couple hours.
That's awesome. I mean, what a beautiful ending to a complicated story, and one that kind of hit you at such a later stage in life. I can only imagine what that does to somebody. And I don't know if you've connected with anybody else in the adoption community or any other birth fathers, or I'm curious if you've done any sort of research or community connecting or anything with adoption.
I've done some work with close friends who were adopted, because I don't know too many adoptive or adopted people, so I don't have a whole lot of experience with it, and a lot of my friends don't have any experience with it either. So I was kind of limited in the resources that I did have. So a lot of it I kind of leaned on her birth mother, who was also adopted. She kind of guided me through a lot of things in terms of how to process emotionally with it in respect to this specific time. I did a lot of reading. I didn't do much community work as far as getting into the community, but a lot of reading stories, a lot of that kind of thing. But what I found is there's really not a lot for birth fathers. There's some decent amount of stuff for birth mothers and adoptive parents and adoptive kids, but there's not a whole lot out there for birth fathers.
Yeah. And they are often the ones left out of the whole process, or at least not always given a voice. Every story is very different. So, and every scenario is different. So sometimes birth fathers should have more of a right, and sometimes maybe not. But it's always interesting to hear, well, every story is so unique, but to hear from everybody's own personal viewpoint, because what I find in adoption is a lot of times people want to put a voice to a whole community of people, like to a whole piece of the triad, and you just can't. And I think you have such a healthy outlook, or such a healthy, yeah, outlook on the whole thing, and the way that it's been handled, given the players, right?
Yeah.
Her parents who have already had previous experience with adoption, and has that connection with your daughter in that way as well. And then being so open to you, and you having the wherewithal, the thought process of not holding on to anger, or not needing to know all the details because it doesn't really serve you. I mean, not a lot of people can do that.
It's taken a long time. Took a
Yeah.
lot of therapy. I think part of it has to do with my own kind of personal familial issues as a kid. There was a lot of time where I was like looking for answers, and then even if I got the answers, it doesn't change anything. So I stopped trying to dwell on, past and my personal history and things like that, and just kind of move forward in stride and see where it goes.
How do you think therapy has played a role here, like in helping you deal with any, all of this that you were going through, helping you heal and helping you process?
I think it was probably the most important part of my personal journey in this. And not only that, it helped me kind of process and understand my role, or where I could fit in, or what kind of relationship we can have. And not only that, but how it's going to affect the people around me. So at the very beginning, I did not consider how it would directly affect my partner and my circle of people. So it was a big thing at first for me to do what I needed to take care of myself, but it also almost got to a point where it was at the expense of other people, or my partner, or family. But I would say therapy was the most important part.
I love that you said that, because when I work with only hopeful parents. I don't work with the birth families and the expectant parents at all. And when they start with us, we tell everybody that it's a really good idea to find a therapist now who's adoption competent, because it's never a matter of if, it's a matter of when you're going to need to reach out and talk with somebody.
Yes.
I think maybe 2% of our clients actually take that to heart. And everybody who ended up needing one later has said how much that helped. And it's things like that. And it's things like connecting with other people in the community that people poo-poo at first and think, oh, I don't need that, I can just do it on my own. And then they do, and they realize that was the game changer that they needed, that they didn't know they needed. And so I think that's important. And you mentioned something about, relationships with so many people who were in your life before, navigating a relationship with your daughter, navigating a relationship with her parents, and with yourself, right?
Mhm.
Were you ever worried about, or did you ever get comments from other people that you shared with, like with judgments against you, or, getting somebody pregnant, whatever it might be? Did you ever deal with any of that, or the fear of that?
I guess not directly.
I mean, you were young, so it's a little different, but
Yeah, so I think there's still probably a lot of people that don't know. It's not something that I kind of put out there at first. Obviously, if you know me or have a relationship with me or follow me on social media or anything like that, you'll see pictures and things like that. But I don't go into detail. I feel like if people wanted to know, they can always come ask me. It's not something that I'm necessarily trying to hide, but it's also not something that I throw out at the dinner table either.
yeah.
And just for clarity, this is my second child. Well, technically first, there was one that I did know about that was a donation to a couple friend of mine.
Okay.
And I do have a relationship with them and their son now, but it's just different whether you know about them or not, or I was involved in the whole process from beginning to end in that one. But to find out, that they're 9 or 10 years old is a different story.
So you had one that was intentional and one that was not intentional.
Yes, still both like not necessarily mine. They both have loving families and they're taken care of.
Do you want children?
I do one day. I think that's part of the reason it was very important to me to have a good relationship with her, my daughter, is because I do want children, and I do want that kind of responsibility and I think everybody wants to see a little mini me running around, right? You can watch grow up and teach things and all that kind of stuff. So one day I think I will, but I don't know when that'll be.
So if you had advice, or whether it be advice for other expectant moms who are thinking about making an adoption plan, or birth fathers, or guys that may have gotten a girl pregnant, or advice to yourself as the kid that you were, what would you say?
I would say you can't change what you've done in the past, but you can always change where you're going in the future. So no matter what kind of person you were previously, good, bad, ugly, whatever, you can always determine the ending of your story. So there's options, and it's never too late to change.
And it's never too late to start a relationship, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
And what about to birth moms who are thinking of making a plan but leaving the birth father out of it?
I don't think I would be in a position to give any advice there, only because every situation is different.
Yeah,
I think there are some cases where, you know, not telling the birth father is understandable, and I think there's probably some cases where it's not. But ultimately, it's your decision. Do what's best for you and the child. That would be the only thing that I could think of in that regard.
are you glad you took that 23andMe test?
I am. I'm very glad I took the 23andMe test.
You never know what you're gonna find, huh?
Yeah, I didn't expect that, but I think it's great. I love it.
Awesome. Were you hesitant to reach out? Oh, well, I guess you reached out to her parents and they made the decision. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
and the way they kind of worded it was she had been interested in her birth mother for kind of her whole life, and I think that's a big thing for
Yeah.
adoptive kids as well. Through my reading, is
Mhm.
mothers definitely get the priority in that, but I think every child deserves to know where they came from.
100%. My son's birth father didn't come into the picture for many years later. My son's 10, and I think he came into the picture when he was 8 or 9. So more recently, and I can see that it has made a big difference for him to now have all the pieces. You
Yeah,
know?
and to just see kind of why you do certain things or why you look a certain way, or
Yeah.
and it's crazy to think, even the first time meeting her, her mannerisms kind of reminded me a lot of myself. And it's one of those things where I didn't know whether it was going to be a nature or nurture type thing, but I think it's a little bit of both. uh,
Sure.
I think it's genetic, and I also think it's environmental.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much. That's it, unless you have anything else you think is important to be sharing.
I think that's it for me. I appreciate you reaching out. Thank you for giving guys like me an outlet
Yeah.
to share our side, and I look forward to either reading about it or seeing it later.
Yeah, we'll definitely share it with you. And as you're talking, I think I'm trying to think from an adoptive parent standpoint, right? Like listening to this, what would we want them to get out of it? And I think that there's a couple things. I think that we are all afraid of the unknown, right? We
Mhm.
fear who a birth mother is, and we fear even more who a birth father is, right? They're these big, scary guys who, whatever. And just to be open to all the relationships, and to really stop to hear somebody's story and to learn somebody else's side of the story, and to really understand someone's heart, and to open that up for our children, because like you said, it's so important for all of us to know who and where we came from, if that's available to us.
Definitely. And I think now with technology and times, we're at a point where you can get that information, whether it's, you know, DNA or just people being more open to adoption, and at least speaking about it publicly.
Yeah, that's awesome.